The Anderson family dinner was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking, designer shoes clicking on marble floors and egos inflating by the minute. I sat quietly at the far end of the mahogany dining table, watching my relatives parade their successes like peacocks showing off their feathers. James just closed another multi-million-dollar deal, Aunt Patricia announced, beaming at her son. My cousin James adjusted his Rolex with practiced casualness. And Emma's interior design business is taking off, Uncle Robert chimed in. She just finished decorating a celebrity's penthouse. Emma, my other cousin, pretended to be embarrassed by the attention, but I could see her drinking it in. The crystal chandelier above cast shadows that made everyone look slightly sinister, or maybe that was just my perspective. What about you, Alexandra? Aunt Patricia's attention suddenly swiveled to me, her smile sharp as a knife. Still doing that? What was it again? Investment consulting, I replied quietly, taking a sip of wine. Oh, right, from your little home office. She laughed, the sound echoing off the high ceilings of her mansion. How quaint. I could have corrected her. Could have mentioned that my little home office was actually the entire top floor of a downtown high-rise. But I'd learned long ago that sometimes silence is the best revenge. At least she's trying, Uncle Robert said with fake generosity. Not everyone can be as successful as our children. The annual family meeting had always been like this, a competition of who could flaunt their wealth more openly while subtly putting down anyone they saw as beneath them. This year was especially intense because Grandfather had announced he would be updating his will. Speaking of success, James cut in, straightening his designer tie. Emma and I have some news. We're both buying new properties. Premium locations, exclusive neighborhoods. Custom builds, Emma added smugly. Nothing but the best. I hid my smile behind my wine glass. They had no idea. Alexandra, my grandfather's voice suddenly cut through the chatter. Everyone fell silent. In the Anderson family, when Gregory Anderson spoke, you listened. You've been quiet tonight. I met his eyes across the table. Unlike the others, his gaze held something different, a hint of knowing amusement. Just enjoying the conversation, Grandfather. He nodded slowly, a slight smile playing at his lips. He alone knew the truth about my success, had watched me build my empire quietly while the rest of the family dismissed me. It had been our little secret for years. Well, James said loudly, clearly annoyed at not being the center of attention, while some of us are content with mediocrity, Emma and I are closing on our properties next week. Prime real estate. Very exclusive. Through Sterling Properties, right? I asked innocently. James blinked, surprised I knew the developer's name. Yes, actually. How did you dash? Just keeping up with the market, I said softly. It's part of my job after all. Emma rolled her eyes. Please, like you'd know anything about luxury real estate. While we all succeeded, you're still a nobody. Living in your tiny apartment, playing at being a businesswoman. The room erupted in poorly concealed snickers. Aunt Patricia didn't even try to hide her amusement. I suppose we can't all be winners, she said with fake sympathy. Some people just aren't cut out for real success. I felt Grandfather's eyes on me, saw his slight nod. After 15 years of staying quiet, of building my empire in silence, it was finally time. You know what's interesting about Sterling Properties? I said, my voice carrying clearly across the table. They were actually acquired last month. New ownership. James frowned. What are you talking about? Everything's proceeding with our purchases exactly as planned. Oh, I know. I reached into my bag, pulling out a folder. I made sure of that. The room went silent as I laid the papers on the table. Property deeds, acquisition documents, mortgage agreements, all bearing my signature as owner and CEO. You see, I continued, enjoying the way their faces began to pale, Sterling Properties is just one of my company's recent acquisitions. Along with the Morton Ridge development where Uncle Robert's mansion is, and the Lakewood Estates where Aunt Patricia lives. What? Aunt Patricia's voice was barely a whisper. In fact, I said, spreading out the documents, I own all of your properties. Every mansion, every summer home, every piece of exclusive real estate you've been bragging about. I'm your landlord. The silence that followed was deafening. James's Rolex clinked against his water glass as his hand began to shake. That's impossible, Emma stammered. You're nothing. You work from home. I smiled. My home office. You mean the penthouse suite of the Anderson Tower downtown? The building I bought 5 years ago. The Anderson Tower? Uncle Robert's voice cracked. But that's named after me, yes. I looked around the table, meeting each shocked face. Would you like to know what else I own? The crystal glasses sat forgotten as I continued, revealing the extent of my empire. Each document I pulled from my folder was another crack in their carefully constructed reality. The exclusive country club you're all so proud of being members at? I acquired it 3 years ago. Those luxury condos you've been competing to get into, James? My company developed them. The high-end shopping district where Emma's design studio is located? I bought the entire block last summer. But you're just a consultant, Aunt Patricia sputtered, her perfectly manicured hands gripping the edge of the table. No, I corrected her calmly. That's just what you assumed because it was easier than acknowledging I might be more successful than your precious children. Grandfather chuckled softly from his seat at the head of the table. All eyes turned to him. You knew. Uncle Robert accused. All this time. Of course I knew, Grandfather said, his voice strong despite his age. Who do you think gave Alexandra her first investment advice? While you were all busy showing off your material possessions, she was building something real. I remembered that day clearly 15 years ago when Grandfather had called me into his study. I was fresh out of college, overwhelmed by my family's constant competition and criticism. They think success is about showing off, he told me. But real success is about building something lasting. Something they never see coming until it's too late. He'd given me startup capital, not much, just enough to prove myself. I'd turned that initial investment into a real estate empire, all while my family dismissed me as unsuccessful. This is ridiculous. James stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. I'm calling my lawyer. These contracts can't be valid. Go ahead, I said, sliding my business card across the table. Have them contact Anderson Holdings' legal department. I'm sure they'll find everything in order. Emma was frantically scrolling through her phone. Anderson Holdings. Oh my God. Her face went even paler. They're one of the largest real estate investment firms in the country. Top 3 actually, I corrected. We just acquired our biggest competitor last month. It was in all the business papers, not that any of you read those. But the houses we're buying, James protested weakly. The contracts are already signed. Yes, with my company. Congratulations on your new homes, by the way. The mortgage terms are quite favorable, I made sure of that. Family discount and all. My smile didn't quite reach my eyes. Aunt Patricia found her voice again. You can't do this. We're family. Family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Was it family when you excluded me from Emma's wedding because I wasn't successful enough to be seen with your society friends? Was it family when you told everyone at James's graduation party that I was the family disappointment? That was different, she protested. We were just what? Making sure I knew my place? Well, now you know my place. I own every piece of property you live in, work in, or socialize in. I've been watching you compete over who could buy the most expensive homes, never realizing you were all just paying rent to me. Uncle Robert's face had turned an interesting shade of red. This is some kind of trick. You're trying to manipulate us because of Grandfather's will. Grandfather's laugh was louder this time. The will. Oh, Robert, you still don't understand. Alexandra doesn't need my money. She's worth more than all of you combined. I pulled out one final document, a financial statement showing Anderson Holdings' current market value. As it passed around the table, the silence grew heavier. 15 billion? Emma whispered. That's more money than you can imagine? I finished for her. Yes, it is. And I built it all while you were busy mocking my little consulting business. James slumped back in his chair, his earlier bravado completely deflated. Why reveal this now? Why not just keep quiet? I stood up, smoothing my designer dress, one that cost more than his Rolex but didn't scream for attention. Because Grandfather asked me to. He wanted you all to understand something about real success before he updated his will. It's not about showing off or putting others down. It's about building something meaningful. Speaking of the will, Grandfather said, his voice carrying authority that silenced the room again. I've made my decision. Alexandra will inherit controlling interest in the family trust. What? Aunt Patricia screeched. But she already has her own money. Our children need dash. Need what? Grandfather cut her off. More resources to waste on showing off? More money to fuel their egos? Oh. Alexandra has proven she knows how to build and maintain wealth. She knows the value of hard work and humility. I gathered my documents, tucking them back into my folder. Don't worry. Your homes are secure as long as you keep making the payments. I'm not vindictive. Unlike you, I don't feel the need to hurt people to make myself feel superior. And my design studio? Emma asked in a small voice. The lease is safe, I assured her. In fact, if you're interested in actually growing your business instead of just bragging about it, my commercial development division is always looking for talented designers. She blinked, surprised by the offer. But, I added, you'd have to earn it. No special treatment, no shortcuts. Just honest work and real results. I'd like that, she said quietly, and for the first time, I saw something genuine in her expression. James cleared his throat. What about the rest of us? That depends on you, I said simply. I'm always looking for dedicated people who want to learn and grow. But check your egos at the door. In my company, success is earned, not inherited. As the implications of everything sank in, the dynamic in the room shifted. The carefully constructed hierarchy they'd built, with James and Emma at the top, had crumbled. Now they all sat there, realizing that the cousin they'd dismissed for years was actually the most powerful person in the room. One more thing, I said, pausing at the dining room door. Those country club membership fees you've all been bragging about? They're going up next month. Significantly. Might want to check your budgets. With that, I walked out, leaving them to digest their new reality. Grandfather followed me to the foyer, his eyes twinkling. That was quite a show, he said softly. I learned from the best, I replied, helping him with his coat. Did you see their faces when I mentioned the country club? He chuckled. Priceless. But you're not really raising the fees, are you? No, I admitted. But they don't need to know that. Let them sweat a little. Maybe it'll teach them some humility. As we walked to my car, a modest luxury vehicle, not the flashy sports cars my cousins preferred, I heard raised voices coming from the dining room. The family meeting had devolved into chaos, just as expected. You know they'll try to challenge the will, I said as I helped grandfather into the passenger seat. Let them, he replied calmly. Your Aunt Patricia always thought she could manipulate me with her children's supposed success. Time she learned that real success doesn't need to be announced at every family dinner. I drove us through the exclusive neighborhood where Aunt Patricia's mansion stood proud among other luxury homes. All owned by my company, all part of my quiet empire. What made you decide it was time? I asked, curious about why he'd chosen this moment for the revelation. I saw how they treated you at Christmas, he said, his voice hardening slightly. When James made that comment about your sad little office job, I realized they needed to learn that true success isn't about putting others down to lift yourself up. We pulled up to his estate, the original family home, modest compared to the mansions my relatives had bought to show off their wealth. Besides, he added with a smile, I wanted to see their faces when they realized who their landlord was. Consider it an early Christmas present. I laughed, helping him out of the car. Well, I think that's one family dinner they won't forget. No, he agreed. And maybe next time they'll think twice before dismissing someone as unsuccessful just because they don't brag about their achievements. As I drove home to my penthouse in the Anderson Tower, I couldn't help but smile. Years of quiet work, of being underestimated and dismissed, had led to this moment. I'd built something real, something lasting, while they were all busy competing over who could show off the most. Tomorrow they'd wake up to the realization that every property they'd bragged about, every exclusive address they'd competed over, was actually mine. Their rent checks would feel different now, knowing they were contributing to the success of the cousin they'd labeled a failure. But more importantly, maybe they'd finally understand what grandfather had tried to teach them all along. Real success doesn't need to be announced. Sometimes the quietest person in the room is the most successful of all. As for me, I had an empire to run. After all, someone had to maintain all those properties they were so proud to live in.